Thank you, Sarah. That's brilliant. So welcome everybody. We've made it to Thursday. That's always a good sign, isn't it? So I'm really looking forward to today. I mean, the Chamber has, like loads of people, has been looking at how do you take a kind of all face-to-face delivery, particularly when you do so many events like we do, and kind of take these online and make them, really meaningful to your audience. So we've been working on our webinar program. We do 4 webinars a week. And we start off on a Tuesday afternoon with a member networking session, which for a while was coffee and a virtual slice of cake. So you had to bring your own cake. And we were just kind of talking through issues, really, coronavirus related issues, really, for a long time. And for the first time, this week we took our DAC 123 event online. So our DAC 123 event is a fab event. We usually go to a member, they get the chance to kind of talk about their business and what they do, and then we split off into discussion groups. So we used Zoom for that this week, and it worked really well using the breakout rooms. And we talked about how people's marketing plans have changed and how they think they're going to change further, and also what kind of business support and training needs that businesses would be having this year and beyond. So yeah, some really interesting and useful discussions this week. Tuesday evenings are a guide to series, and this week was a guide to cybersecurity in coronavirus terms, and it was really interesting. We had again, some obvious things that kind of you don't necessarily think that you're potentially exposed to, like we're all working at home at the moment, and if you've got, it doesn't have to be teenagers. We were sort of talking about teenagers. It could be your elderly parents that you've had around, and you've given them the Wi-Fi password, and they've shared that with somebody else, and now you're sitting with your business device connected to that same network, and if their devices are not up to date with all the right security and the right versions of the software, then not only are they exposed, but through your network, you're also exposed. And that means your business is exposed. So we were talking about all those kinds of issues on Tuesday evening. Wednesdays is our session where we actually look at people support. And that's really, really important. I mean, we started that program looking at mental health and well-being. We've done things like motivating people, how you work remotely and manage remote teams. And this week again, it was about kind of, how do you support employees? So our Wednesday sessions have really been vital in kind of making us think about not only what do our businesses need, but what do our people need too. So whether it's your employees, whether it's your staff, your colleagues, whether it's your family and your friends, and most importantly, whether it's you, it's back to that thing that they tell you on airplanes, which is put your own mask on first. So, look after yourself and make sure you're okay, and then you can be in a good position to help other people. So yeah, we've had an interesting week this week, and obviously Thursday sessions is all about the support for the business, and today's going to be very interesting as we talk through some of those challenges. The Chamber's also been involved this week in, there's a national quarterly economic indicator survey that we take part in, and so we'll hopefully send out the link to that. It's still live at the moment, where we're looking to get feedback on what Q2 has been like for businesses and what the next quarter may look like as we're going forward. So yeah, loads of stuff going on this week. We're also talking about virtual trade missions, and actually Russell and I need to have a proper catch up about this, because Russell does a lot of overseas business to business connecting as well, and the Chamber Network has got a contract with Scottish Government, and as the local chamber we are going to be running virtual trade missions this year. We are looking at Dubai, we are going to be doing something with the Netherlands, probably around the circular economy and how that fits into our Circular Tayside programme. We've got a Swedish Chamber of Commerce that we've got very strong connections to, so we're looking at Sweden and probably Denmark as well this year. And one of our members does a lot of work with Houston, and we've worked with them in the past, so we're looking at Houston and possibly another couple of areas. But yeah, lots of interesting stuff to do. we should have been in Dubai in April, and for a while we weren't sure how virtual trade missions might work. But I think you don't have to take a week out of your business to go off and make those connections and build those connections. You don't have to spend on travel and staying in hotels. Okay, you definitely miss out on embedding yourself in the culture and that face-to-face building connections with people. So, but people in other parts of the world are going to have to work in different ways, as we will have to. So I think virtual trade missions are something that we're really excited about and looking forward to. So yeah, lots of things going on, and our team's continuing to dress up in our team meetings in the morning, so we've got something to talk about on the Chamber's Instagram. So yeah, hopefully you've been kind of following that and seeing what we've been getting up to. But I think that's kind of enough for me. I will get out of the way now and hand over to our speakers. So we've obviously got Susan and we've got Russell with us today, and then there'll be a Q&A at the end. So I'm going to hand over to Susan first. So Susan, if you want to unmute yourself, when I can hear you, I'll mute and get out of your way.
Okay, thank you. I am going to try and share my screen. I'm really hoping technology is on my side for this next kind of half an hour, because just before this session started, I don't know if you noticed, Sarah, but I completely disappeared and I was kicked out and I couldn't get back in, and my Wi-Fi had gone, so fingers crossed. So I think I may now, Sarah, be put as a participant, so I'm not being able to share my screen. So if you could maybe change that, and then I can just bring up my PowerPoint.
We had a bit of a drama with Sarah on Monday morning because her new kitten pulled out the Wi-Fi cable, and all of a sudden during the team meeting, it was like, where's Sarah gone?
Oh gosh, I know all the things that technology issues that we're now encountering. We're so dependent on it. So hopefully you can all see the PowerPoint now. And what I'm going to do is I am going to be talking through our Survive, Pivot, Adapt, Thrive model that we've been working with clients. But particularly today, starting to focus in the Pivot, Adapt phase that many kind of businesses are finding themselves in, and really trying to look in how we can help you think about where the opportunities might be for you to pivot and adapt your business and your role. Before we get started, I would really like to do a poll. I've got a couple of questions that would be great if you could answer them to kind of work out where you're all sitting in this kind of Survive, Pivot, Adapt, Thrive roadmap that I'm going to run through. So if we could bring up the poll questions now. I've got 2 questions. I will just start reading through them before as the polls come up. So the first question that I'm going to ask you is, what stage of COVID-19 best describes your business at present? And we've got 3 answers for you to choose. The first one is that you're kind of in survival phase still, so you're adapting rapidly to the current market conditions. The second option, and don't worry, you will be able to read these through when they come up. The second option is that you're actually in the Pivot Adapt phase now. So you're starting to explore innovations, pivot strategies, you're adapting your delivery and your business models, and you're developing new products and services for an evolved marketplace. And the third option would be that you're in the Thrive phase of the roadmap. So you're on the front foot as the market slowly returns in some areas, and you're ready with improved capabilities, clear strategies, and a stable business to meet emerging needs. So that is the first question.
The polls should be up on everybody's screen.
All right.
Susan and I were testing these as we first came onto the call, and I think because we have crossed them out, they've come off of our screen. So I think, Susan, if you, down the bottom, you should see poll. If you click that button, that should bring the poll up for you.
No, I'm not seeing it, but if everyone, hold on a second.
So we've got 12 of 19 people who have responded.
All right, okay. No, apologies, I can't see it. I'm just going to quickly see if I've. I can't see. Oh, I've paused. Yep, sorry. Okay, fantastic. Okay, and I'll just quickly run through the second question, and thanks very much. And what level of impact best describes the situation you're confronting? So the 3 options there. We've got number 1, which is busy. So you've got busyness is still going well, but there is disruption to the way you're operating. Demand may even be increasing. The second option is low impact, so a 10 to 20% reduction to revenue with uncertainty and short-term impact. And the third option is severe impact, so more than 50% reduction in revenue or business has stopped. So if you could just take 30 seconds or so just to complete that. I'll just remind you that your responses will be anonymous. So once we've got everyone responded, we will then show up the results.
Susan, I think we've got a couple of people who perhaps don't have yeah.
That's okay. We can just take the results as they are, because I think that will give us a good representation. And if you haven't been able to complete the poll, you can just jot down your answers as well. So it's just good to get an idea. The results are looking like exactly what I would have been expecting and what I've been seeing amongst our clients and businesses. So yeah, I'm happy to end the poll. And yep, so we've got most people in pivot and adapt. 65% there of results, which is great because that's what I was wanting to focus on. And again, low impact. So that is fantastic. Thank you very much for completing that. We've got still a couple in the survival mode and a good few in thrive, which is amazing. And I have to say, when I've been doing this with our clients and our business leaders, we haven't actually had anyone in the thrive phase yet. So that's really pleasing to see that. And again, in what level of impact? Low impact is where I'm seeing the majority sit. Seen a few in busy, and that's brilliant to see that there's so many in the busy. And obviously not so good seeing people in the severe. So what I will do is now end the poll and move back onto our PowerPoint. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to take those results and think about plotting yourself on this roadmap model that I'm going to talk through. What you'll see across the top is the 3 areas in the roadmap. So survive, the pivot, adapt, and the thrive. And that's the first question in the poll. So where you're sitting in there, as we saw, most people in pivot and adapt. And then down the left-hand side column that I'm pulling up now, you're seeing the 3 different scenarios that you could vote on for option 2, busy, low impact, and high impact. Now, what we saw was most people sitting in this blue kind of shaded area, although as I said, there was a few people in thrive, a few people still in survive. And that is exactly what I've been seeing with the people I'm working with as well. We first kind of launched this model at the end of March, early April. And you know, we were in survive for quite a long time with our clients, and it's more recently over May and into June that we've been moving into pivot adapt. So what we're then going to do is in this pivot and adapt phase, we absolutely see this as a kind of 3 to 6 month series of continually pivoting and adapting your strategies, your products, your service to the ever-changing market, government guidance, regulations that we're all having to adhere to. And it won't be till we're kind of past that we're more starting to move into the thrive area. And what we've got under each scenario is a number of strategies that you could be thinking about, or plans that you could be thinking about implementing, dependent on where you're sat. So this slide is going to get really busy. So what I want you to do is just think about the 2 answers to your questions and find your quadrant on this map. And just kind of focus in on that square and don't get too overwhelmed by all the other information on the slide. And what I've got is a handout that I will send on after the webinar today for you to keep referring to. Because if you were in, say, survival and low impact quadrant, it's really useful to keep referring to this roadmap as you start to see yourself moving towards pivot and adapt. You can look ahead and start thinking about what strategies you should start to work on. And again, as you're coming to the end of pivot and adapt and starting to think that you're in the thrive phase, you can look ahead to think about what strategies you need to be working on in that phase. So it's definitely not one just to put away in a drawer when you've worked out what quadrant you're sitting in, but one to keep referring to and aiming to be moving across this roadmap from left to right. So in the top box here, and I'm going to focus on the pivot adapt column because that's where most of you were sat. You'll see there's some strategies here, and I'm not going to read through them all, but that would be applicable for all scenarios. And then as we go down this column, I can start to focus on ones that are applicable to each scenario. So the bottom bullet point here, there was one that I did just want to touch on, which says perfection is the enemy of good. Get new thinking 80% right and move. Embrace the minimum viable solution, the MVS, or the minimum viable product, the MVP, which is probably a familiar term to you all. Experiment and trial quickly before making a big investment. And again, that just kind of reiterates what I was saying about this 3 to 6 month series of pivoting and adapting. If you think you've got a new opportunity or a new idea or something to tweak your product or your service, just don't wait till it's absolutely perfect. Just get it out there. Get it out to the market when you're about 80% right, and then let the customers feedback to you. What's working, what's not, tweak and adapt further. And it's a continual cycle. So I thought that one was worth just raising to you. And then as we go down this column, you'll see some specific ideas if you were in that busy. There was quite a few of you in that busy and pivot adapt quadrant. So that's where you want to focus in on this one. And then again, the majority of you were in this low impact box. So what I want to do is just read out these 3 bullet points to you as some things that you should be thinking about while you're in this phase. So firstly, make sure you have a strategic plan, and particularly focusing on recovering the lost business that you've experienced and evolving into potential new product and service areas. And secondly, really want you to think about how you can evolve your product and service surround. So not your core product, but all those nice added extras that the customers place a lot of value on, and imagine them in your evolved market. And I'm actually going to move on in a minute to a tool that's focused specifically on this product surround. So just hold that thought there, and we'll come on and explore that in a little bit more detail. And the other point here under this pivot adapt, where you're low impact, is thinking about your team and thinking about who's really stepped up over the past couple of months, who's really, you've discovered potentially future leaders in your business, and just grab onto them, give them more challenges, accelerate them. You want to keep them and retain them in your business. So it's always worth having a think about who have been the kind of shining stars over the past couple of months as well. So similarly, some specific strategies around when you've had a high impact, severe impact there was a couple of people in that zone. And then I'm just going to pull up the rest of the slide for those that were still in survive, or those of you that were in thrive. And as I say, I'm not going to go into this in any more detail, but I will circulate it after. And I would happily chat to any of you on a one-to-one basis to go through the quadrant that you're in and what you could be working on under these areas. The final row of the map here is the tools that we've been working on with our clients, dependent on where they are. So when you're in survival mode, I'm sure you've all covered these disaster scenario plans, thinking about your workforce planning, but moving into pivot adapt, the tool that I'm going to focus on, which is second from the bottom there, is the product surround, which I said I was going to come on and talk about. So I'm going to move on from this roadmap and now talk about where we can look for opportunities to pivot and adapt your business and your role. So you've probably all been doing this and constantly thinking about what you can do to adapt to the current environment, but maybe potentially not looked at it using this product surround model. And what you'll see is you'll see 2 circles, and you've got a small circle in the middle, and that's where we represent our core product. And then you've got an outer circle called our product surround. So essentially each product or service that we have has the core, And that's where you have kind of 80% of your costs. I'm just applying the Pareto 80-20 rule here, but only 20% of the perceived benefit to a customer. And then in your product surround, all these nice added extras, that's where it's probably only experiencing about 20% of your cost, but what the customers perceive to be 80% of the value of your product or service. So the first thing before using this model is you really need to consider what is your core product and service and what is secondary to it. And then we want to start working on how we can actually evolve and improve the value of your product surround, because that's where your customers are seeing the value. That's how you're going to draw them in. So just some simple examples here I was thinking about earlier. So if you think about the luxury car market, I don't know, Mercedes, BMW or something, their core product, and where's 80% of their cost is things like the mechanics, the design of the car, the materials, and that's probably only giving about 20% of the perceived value to the customer, rightly or wrongly, I may add there. Their product surround, the things that are about 20% of the cost, the things that the customers perceive as 80% of the value, would be things like, oh, what sound system does it have? What color is it going to be? What are the interiors like? Am I going to have a luxury leather? All those kind of things are their product surround. So I just wanted to give that as an example of what the core and the surround would be. Another simple illustrative example I was thinking of was a gym. If you think in a gym, you've got premises, you've got equipment, you've got staff. That's kind of your core product. And in the products around, the things that the customers really place the value on would be things like maybe you don't have a joining fee. Maybe you don't have a contract tie-in for a year. Maybe you're open 24/7 so that customers can access it at any point. Or maybe you've got a creche that's great for attracting mums with small children. So again, that's the point. Now actually it's probably only about 20% of your cost base, but they're the things that are adding value to the customer. So as I said, when we're using this model, the first thing is to think about what is your core product and what is your product surround. And then once you've done that, one way to approach this model is to start then thinking about what are the customer's needs and problems over the next 6 to 12 months. So I'm using a live example that I'm working on with a client at the moment, and it's a restaurant business. So what I think about and discuss with the client, first of all, is what are the problems and needs for the restaurant customers over the next 6 to 12 months. And you'll see these pop up in red now around the outside of the circle. So things like customers are going to be nervous going back into a restaurant. Customers are tired of cooking each night. I know the initial surge of home baking and cooking in my house is certainly tailing off. We've got social distancing rules that we need to abide by. We also need to make sure we can retain key staff, such as the chef, for example. So these are just 4 examples of the problems that I was discussing with my client, but you could have even like up to 20, that loads of different needs. And I would recommend, even if you're doing a model like this, it's so visual, having it on, a piece of flip chart paper or poster on your wall. And whenever you've spoken to a customer and heard of a new issue that they're facing, or whenever you've seen a new government development that you think is going to impact your customers, or maybe you've read an article or read a piece in the newspaper, and you think of something else that's going to impact your customer, write it up. Or maybe you've got a pack of Post-it notes, and whenever you think of a new issue, just write it on a Post-it note and stick it up. So this becomes really populated with loads of different problems and needs for your customers that then you can address. So after you've kind of brainstormed, and it's something if you've got a team to push it out to them and get them to come back with ideas as well. But once you've brainstormed all the problems and needs, you can move on to the next question. And now you're thinking about what are the strategies that you could now actually embrace to adapt to these problems and needs of your customers. So what opportunities are there to pivot and adapt? So again, I've just populated a couple of examples, but you would have loads of different ideas in this product surround. So for example, for the customers are nervous and they don't know how you're going to be operating under the new social distancing rules. Why not start working on the website, promoting the measures that you're putting in place? again, customers are tired of cooking each night. Why don't we start engaging with online delivery? It's definitely what we've seen a lot of businesses and restaurants doing recently, and something that I am starting to enjoy maybe too often. So you can see how it's just, as I said, you've probably all been thinking about this already, but it's just a really good structure to capture all these ideas and make sure that you're continually capturing them, updating it, adapting, and a really useful one to use while you're in this pivot and adapt stage. As I said at the beginning, I have this in a handout that I can circulate afterwards along with the roadmap, so you can work along them alongside each other. And if there's any of the other tools in the roadmap that I showed you that look of interest to you, then again, please just contact me, because I'd be more than happy to talk them through or send you some templates for them as well. So yeah, that was a whistle-stop tour of our Survive, Pivot, Adapt and Thrive model, and one of the tools that hopefully will be quite useful for you to try and spot some opportunities that you can start working on. But I am now going to pass you back to Russell, who is going to start talking about the mindset of again, looking for opportunities and being in this pivot adapt phase. So I will just stop the share now and mute myself and hand you over to Russell.
Thanks, Susan. I was going to be bad there and just not switch on my video camera for 5 seconds. But I thought, no, that's not very fair. We're all friends. Thanks so much for that, Susan. You hit some really important points in that presentation. And so much of it's about how we think about what we're going to do, how we go through that thinking process. So I think I know most of the people on this call, but I'm Russell Dalgleish. I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. And it's been a hell of a year. I was trying to think about how to sum up 2020. You know, if I imagined this was the 1st of January 2021, which I assure you will be, that we'll have just come through the greatest Hogmanay celebration ever to have got out of this bloody year. I think if I think of 2020, it's almost been the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. It's pandemic. Next up's recession. We're going to continue dealing with social isolation. And I don't want everyone to forget what we get at the end of the year, which is Brexit. So that's quite a lot to cram into 1 year. But I also want us not to forget March the 23rd. I don't think I'll ever forget March the 23rd. I was sitting at home with my youngest son, who's 23. He was out with us. My oldest son had come home because his girlfriend's in Belfast, and the Prime Minister announced the lockdown. And that feeling of what was going to happen next, you know, were all those apocalyptic science fiction films I've watched over the years, was this about to be what was going to hit our country? And as a family, my younger son announced that his girlfriend was going to be on her own in Edinburgh. His new girlfriend was going to be on her own in Edinburgh for the lockdown period. So we took a vote as a family. We sat down and asked, should we go and pick her up? And it sounds like a really silly thing to do now in hindsight, but at the time we were very serious, and we sat down and decided. And of course we decided we should go and pick her up. And we did that. I drove into town, and I can remember leaving the house and I was thinking, what are the roads going to be like? You know, will there be no cars on the roads? Will there be police checkpoints? Will the army be out? I've watched a lot of science fiction films, I should tell you. So we took off. And what happened was I got stuck behind a tractor and then got stuck in the traffic in Edinburgh. And eventually we picked her up. But what it reminded me of was how my mindset had affected how I was going on that car journey. A car journey from the Lithgow into Edinburgh, I've done thousands of times. But on this occasion, my mindset had changed. And I decided this was a doomsday scenario. We should also at this precise moment remember again about that night of March the 23rd and the people. This is a health emergency we've just been through and are still travelling through. The numbers of people who have died in the UK and around the world due to coronavirus is appalling. The effect on their families, the effect on the people who've worked on the front line in our hospitals and in our shops and delivering our food, and like the Amazon workers who've done all this stuff, the effect on them and how they've been there for us. But we're where we are today. You know, we've come through this journey to this point. We've still got 3 more or 2 more horsemen of the apocalypse to face. But you know what? Statistically, we're very likely to be here on December the 31st. So we've got to work out how to do this journey. And to me, the only way we're going to get through this is developing a mindset that'll allow us to cope. Now, I appreciate how annoying I am, because I am consistently upbeat and positive. I'm very fortunate that the woman who's chosen to share her life with me can point out on a daily basis how annoying it is to be married to someone who is so consistently upbeat and positive. But I wasn't upbeat and positive at the end of March. I was taking on board all of these concerns, the same as everyone else. But I took them on. I digested them and I accepted them. And then I took the advice that we've just heard about planning. So I sat down and I made my plan. But my plan wasn't about me. My plan was about the market. So I looked at the market and I thought, what's going to happen? Well, I run a large diaspora community. What's going to happen there? I run an advisory business. What will happen there? And I've got a public speaking business. What will happen there? I then repositioned all 3 of them, went onto the website and changed the way that they were presenting the offerings to the outside world based on what I thought the world would want. I then started a sales campaign on March the 25th. That sales campaign consisted of 30 LinkedIn messages a day to first connections. So I sent 30 LinkedIn messages every single day to 30 people and asked them how they were feeling, what was happening in their sector, what were they predicting was going to happen. The goal of those emails was to secure a meeting, because a meeting is now incredibly easy. I can do I did 7 back-to-back meetings on Friday afternoon. Bang, 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 bang. All right, they were all on different platforms and my Wi-Fi ran out and we did 2 by telephone, but it's never been an easier time to do meetings. Psychologically, doing meetings with people at the moment, people's heads are in a different place as well. We are affected by our environment much more than we've ever thought. That environment about sitting in an office is totally different from the environment about being at home. I'm lucky, I've got a home office, a converted garage in my back garden. But nevertheless, I'm different here. Not only do I dress differently, but I'm much more relaxed. I'm much more open, and I'm much more looking for new opportunities. So those messages that went out resulted in a number of meetings. I also ran a series of messages to write to people like Alison and went, I would like to donate my time. I would like to donate my time as a speaker. If I can share some of my experience, it'll help some of your members, I'm delighted to do that. And then we've then booked these events all over the country. And by talking at these events, it's also brought me new opportunities and an amazing understanding of what's happening. What does the flavour of running a small business in Scotland feel like at the moment? But what I've noticed about mindset is the planning bit we can do. We can actually sit down and we can plan, but then we get stuck. We get stuck at the execution bit because we go, oh, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure if this plan's right. I'm not quite sure if I should reach out and do these things. For a lot of us, we're in offices surrounded by other people that we use to bounce things off, and that's not there. And the mindset is about execution. You have to do the thing you've planned to do. Whatever that thing looks like in your world, please do it. Because if you don't do it now, you're going to look back and regret not doing it. I'll tell you a secret, right? I have closed more business in the last 6 weeks than I have in the previous year. And that's just amazing for me. I hadn't assumed that's what was going to happen. But the difference is the fact that I've become much more active in a sales way than I was before. Let's face it, I'm working harder now as well. I took 12 weeks holiday for the last 3 years We've got a place in Spain and we go cycling there. Hopefully we've still got a place in Spain. So I've worked hard to do that, and I'm having an unbelievably enjoyable time. I phoned up a member of Scottish Business Network, and we were discussing the challenges people were going to have with sales, because for a lot of us, sales involves going out and meeting people. But if we can't go out and meet people, how are we going to sell stuff? And particularly, how are we going to sell stuff to people we don't know? So my friend Fraser Morrison agreed to run a training course on sales. And we ended up doing this. We ran 3 two-hour sessions free of charge for any company in Scotland. We got 180 people on the call, and we taught people how to use LinkedIn. Not how to use LinkedIn by pressing the buttons, but how to develop and execute a strategy which will secure you more meetings, more referrals, and more business. Unbelievable results. I think Fraser published the results yesterday. And it's just, you would assume, wouldn't you, that this isn't the time to go selling. Some people have said to me, is that morally right, Russell? Are you morally right going out and selling at this time? I'm going, well, initially what I'm doing is helping people. I'm not phoning people up and trying to get them to, hello, do you want some double glazing? Give me some money. I'm not doing that. I'm attempting to understand challenges and problems people have got and then to help them. Also, 75% of those deals that have come in the last 6 weeks have been called into me. Hasn't involved me dialing out. It's the fact that there's been I've showed my presence and I've shown I'm there, and I've maybe got a little bit better at explaining my value proposition and what I'm doing to help. So I want to use an example about how mindset can affect us. So can I ask you to put your hand up if you think it's going to be, I want to ask a question about, is it going to be harder or easier for someone? Let's imagine someone who's running a property that they rent out to tourists in Scotland. And so let's say they're in the Highlands somewhere. So do you think it's going to be harder or easier for them to rent out that property this year? So put your hand up if you think it's going to be harder for them. Do you think it's going to be harder for them to rent out that property this year? And then put your hand up if you think it's going to be easier for them to rent that property. Okay. Oh, some people have used the little buttons. That's amazing. So I believe the honest answer is we don't know, because we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. But we can do the planning. And there are certain things that we can take from planning that will help them. So people are going to holiday more in the UK now than previously. More people are going to book here, except for those people that book cruises. I've read somewhere that cruising bookings are all done for next year. Don't understand. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's 4 of the largest cruise ships in the world. They're all parked in Rosyth at the moment, getting cleaned. So I believe more people will holiday in the UK. And I believe if you think about your little holiday cottage you want to rent out, it'd be quite good to get people who have got a bit of money and would like to pay a little bit more for that cottage. So let's imagine, where could we find those people? Well, they're probably in major cities in the UK. You imagine you're like a very successful family man in the centre of London in an apartment. You'd probably quite like to go on holiday to get out of bloody London. You'd probably like to get your kids so that they could run around in a field somewhere and play. You'd probably like to go on vacation somewhere where there aren't going to be crowds. So going somewhere that's a little bit exclusive and quiet, that would be quite good. What an asset we've got. We've got the whole of the Highlands. Do you know that the North Coast 500's currently scaling for twice the traffic they've ever experienced before? So what a time to go out there. But the challenge you've got is, how do you attract those individuals? How do you tell them you're there? How do you change? So you probably have to change your value proposition a little bit, because I reckon your value proposition previously was, I'm going to have an ad on booking.com and people will book. So you're probably going to have to go out there and reach out to people and tell them, we've got the whole of the Highlands here. You're a millionaire, you're in London, why don't you bring your family here? And then maybe think about the challenges that they will face, the challenges that they'll have to go through about coming to stay with you. So how are they going to get from London to the Highlands? Well, suddenly sleepers look like a fantastic idea. So you can book a room on a train that's exclusively for you, and you never have to meet the other people on the train. So that might be a good thing to talk to them about. You also want to talk, obviously, about the cleanliness of your property, but also some of the assets that you might want to make available to them, like we'll lay on a car for you, we have a hospital nearby, whatever it is, you know, that really sell what you're doing to that new target market. Now, we have no way of knowing what's actually going to happen this year, but we do know this recession's going to be tough. We're in the middle at the moment of an economy we've never seen before. At the current moment, the government is paying 8.1 million people's salaries. There's 5 million people in Scotland. Do you imagine how happy we would be if the government paid every single person in Scotland salaries for the rest of eternity? That'd be pretty cool. We could have a new life. But this money is going to stop. And when that money stops, we're going to see something we've never seen before. Some people are going to go back to work. Some people aren't going to go back to work. That's going to be a shock to our society we've never experienced. And that's why it's so important that you get your mindset right now. You sit down today, you look for where there might be an opportunity for you, and you react to it. What could probably help is if you could tell the future. Can anyone here tell the future? So anyone on this call can tell the future. Look at your sector and what you do and see what people are doing with that around the world. Because around the world, some countries are further ahead than we are in terms of how they're coming out of lockdown. So I've got a legal practice in Manchester, and we've been looking at the nursery sector. And we've based the entire strategy that we shared with nursery owners based on what's happening in Norway, because they opened up nurseries in April. So we've seen what happened there. So you've got all that information available to you, so you can sit down and work out your strategy. Restaurants is a great example. I've looked at the restaurants in Houston. So a lot of restaurants in Houston all reopened as soon as they could, and 3/4 of them have closed again because they can't get the number of covers to cover. They can't get the number of covers to make it economically viable to keep the restaurant open, and they've gone to home deliveries or something else. So what I would say is get your mindset right, get out there and look for the opportunities, and don't think so much about your business. Try and think about what's going to happen in the market. What can I tell is going to happen? I'll put something in the chat. There's a really good, a new website went live yesterday, which shares a lot of public policy documentation from some of the leading thinkers about what they think has happened and what they think is going to happen. If you want to read a book, I'd read a book about how companies have grown during a recession and then steal every idea you can find in it, because that's what's about to happen. So I hope that's kind of helped about what we can do. But the most important thing is we do something. We stride forward in some way. We procedurize it if at all possible, and we get out there and we try and solve problems. These problems are different now than the problems before, and we're going to have to solve them in a different way. If you look at two areas that have boomed, absolutely boomed this year, it's e-commerce and it's e-learning. I've made an investment in e-learning, and I've now just signed a client who's involved in e-learning, but I have nothing in e-commerce, and I'm furious about it because I missed an opportunity there, because I would have poured every penny I could into marketing for e-commerce. Because what have we been through? The entire middle class of the world has been stuck at home. This generation is called the consumer generation. They have two shops, the local supermarket or online. That's the only two places they can buy things. And there's still time. If you've got an e-commerce site, I'd go like Laldi to sell as much as you can. So thank you very much, everybody. I think we're going to go into questions now.
Yeah, thanks very much, Russell and Susan. Susan, Jonathan has a question for you. Jonathan, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and come in and ask.
Okay, thanks very much. No, thanks to both. I think the question was directed more at Susan, but I'd maybe jumped the gun before Russell, you started speaking. But no, I really appreciated both presentations. I think, Susan, I filled it out the poll, and we were in the kind of majority status, in the kind of middle ground. Our difficulty, I guess, is like Russell had said, none of us can predict the future. So we're seeing, anything could happen, really. It could be quite good for us as architects, that people could be living on top of one another, tired of kind of working from their daughters' bedrooms and things like that there could be a boom. But we've also seen a lot of projects cancelled, and with the uncertainty of people's jobs. So, it could very much go either way. So should we be looking at running multiple scenarios? Is that important, I guess? So.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would run different scenarios, have different kind of options, depending on if the market goes this way, that way, or another one, as you're saying, kind of best case, worst case. It will really allow you to be on the front foot, and know your trigger points for each scenario, be looking out for them, and watching out for those triggers so that then you can implement the applicable plans straight away. And then you're going to be quicker to adapt and react to movements in the market, maybe ahead of your competitors, and it will make you more agile. So yeah, I would definitely recommend having different options and different scenario plans.
I would also look at the market. So if you look at what's happening with architects around the world, you'll see some things. There's one thing I'll tell you. There's going to be the biggest boom in home extensions of all time. So we know that's going to happen. I think I've looked at 2 businesses who are doing garden offices, and they just, you could look at them and say that would be a good investment, but they can't scale. They can't scale quickly enough. The other one is for commercial properties. I think there's going to be a lot of adaptation work. Let's rip it all up and do it again. I do have a concern about the 2 meter separation. So in the UK, we've decided you've got to be 2 meters apart. The World Health Organization, that organization that Mr. Trump doesn't like, the World Health Organization states you should be 1 meter apart. So I think there's going to be a bit more flexibility. If you look at countries that have gone backward a couple of months ahead of us, what they've seen is that the 2 meter or the social distancing slowly evaporated. People continued to not touch each other, but people became less concerned about being 2 meters apart. I'm not giving anyone advice there. It's just if you look at some of the statistics from around the world.
Thanks very much. Barry's got a question as well. You want to unmute yourself, Barry, and come in?
Hi, I'm just on mute because my kids are running around in the background, but I just wondered if either of you have knowledge of what's happening in the higher education sector, because I just hear that budgets are going to be slashed. However, I see this as an opportunity for me to sell my training courses internationally. So if anybody has contacts, that would be very much appreciated.
I've got a range of them, so if you want to drop me a message, I can have a look and see. Are your courses currently available online, or are you going to be putting them online?
Yes, I have pre-recorded versions, but I can also do it via Zoom. So, but I'm not actually selling them just yet. I'm just in the final edit stage. So, yeah, just about ready to sell them, but looking for my first customer.
It's interesting. I met one of the top. Did you know Udemy, the training platform where you can sell courses?
Yeah.
One of the top 10 on that site's actually a biolives in Rosyth.
Okay.
So, so we've got quite a lot of experience there on how to do that.
Okay, thanks. I'll get in touch with you then. Thank you.
I'll put my message note in there.
Barry, it might be worth as well just thinking about other ways to kind of raise your profile in that market as well, and potentially running kind of taster sessions and a bit what, like Russell was saying, that he did his sort of free ones that then led into more kind of business for him, but kind of getting your name out there and your expertise and what it is you're actually offering.
Okay, thanks, Susan.
I think before you move on, Sarah, the other thing I would add is it's easier than ever to kind of network with overseas. So, you know, have a look at some of those markets maybe and actually see who's running networking things and join a webinar in the US or the Middle East or something like that, so that you can make some contacts.
Yeah. I was interested in your trade missions as well, because that might be a way in to the international places.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I would be remiss if I didn't pitch to say that I run the largest. We have just under 10,000 people, Scots around the world in 76 countries, who've all agreed to help Scots with businesses who are looking to do something. So we've got quite a lot of insight there. But go on LinkedIn and ask people. You know, asking people for advice on LinkedIn is just amazing.
Sorry, I'm just busy reading Jeremy's comment there regarding, I guess, the fast and the not so fast broadband. Jeremy, I don't know if you want to come in and if you're able to unmute yourself.
No, nothing to add to that really. It's just it's just there. It's a division. It's broadly a rural-urban sort of division, but in respect of, you know, even that example of getting people out into accommodation out in the Highlands, then, you know, they'll need that connectivity. You know, we can have people for extended stays because they can operate more of their business activity online if only they get reliable connection. And I'm really surprised that we haven't heard more of a fuss kicked up through COVID. I know there's plenty of other issues going on, but you know, as the adoption of technology has really advanced, you know, 5 years or so into the future, hasn't it? But actually, the connectivity just remains backwards.
Still not there. Yeah, certainly important.
It's amazing that thing about technology as well, because my next door neighbour is basically the same distance from me as the people in Brisbane, because the only way we can communicate is through this. So that gives us such a colossal market. And if you're now starting to think about the fact people around the world might want to work with you, then use your unfair advantage. I don't know if you noticed this, right? But one of the top US travel magazines called this country the most beautiful country in the world. So people around the world are rather mystified that we never emphasize the fact that we happen to live in the most beautiful country in the world. So when we're talking, it's worth talking about the fact that it looks like this out the window. Trying to use the connectivity we have from living in a country that people don't know much about. In fact, most people don't know anything about Scotland. But you've got that chance to use that to make you a bit different. Because you know yourselves, as you've talked to people around the world, you're interested in what it's like with them. We ask them what their weather's like. The weather question to me is amazing, because our weather's fantastic. You want to try working in Riyadh or working in Alaska. That's bad weather. So use that Scottish opportunity we've got.
I think also with that, the time zones thing becomes, you know, the potential of dealing with, you know, East Coast of America in the afternoon, you know, really presents new opportunities as well.
So that's a brilliant one. So if you think about the trade negotiations that are going on at the moment, the ones that are furthest advanced and the ones that matter more than anything else aren't the UK to Europe, it's the UK to the US. So the negotiations are going on at the moment in Washington. We've appointed ambassadors in different cities, and one of them is working as part of the team. And that market is so important to us, and it's so open to us. And I attended a meeting yesterday where we talked about different Scottish sectors and what was the biggest things that were affecting them. And the biggest thing that's affecting Scottish trade at the moment into New York, into the US, is in the whisky trade with the penalty sanctions that have gone on single malt. Now, that's the same problem that existed on the 1st of February that exists today. The other problems regarding shipping are getting much easier, even air freight's getting much easier. But that market is there for us. I don't know if anyone, sorry, I've got on about it. If anyone remembers when the day we announced that we were coming out of Europe, our currency crashed by 20% against the dollar. So if you're a US citizen, at that moment, every single Scottish company announced a 20% discount sale. That's what happened, because our currency devalued by 20%. And I didn't think about this until I met someone in Rhode Island who was a really keen fisherman, and he'd bought every good fishing reel he could out of Scottish suppliers the week after we exited Brexit. It's really, the day we announced Brexit. So it's really weird thinking about that. Try to think about this the way other people see us, not from our perspective, but from our customers' perspective. What are they thinking? What would they like us to help them with?
Thanks very much, Russell. David, I know that you're wanting to come in on broadband, but we're cutting it fine for time now, and I'm sure people have got other, you know, the world which we live in at the moment. You know, you can, as Russell was saying earlier on when we were on the conversation, you can have a Zoom call 1 minute and then a phone call 30 seconds later for another hour or two, because we're all sat at our desks. I'm aware people will be looking to shoot off. So I'm going to hand over to Alison, who's just going to do a little bit of a thank you.
Okay, well, yeah, as short and sweet as that, really, just to say a massive thank you to you all for dialing in. Lots of really interest. I mean, I've taken lots of notes and lots of things to think about, and lots of actions to go away and do. I was kind of struck, Susan said, or I read on her slide about the, you know, let's not aim for perfection. And I mean, we do a lot in our team thinking about insights and how you know, we prefer to work. And if you're an insights yellow like me, then you're just cracking on and finding the next interesting thing. And our kind of detail-oriented colleagues are fantastic because they help us get things over the line. But equally, you know, don't worry too much about the perfection. We've been very lucky with our community that, you know, we did our very first webinar, I think, on day 2 of being remote working. So you just have to give things a go. And most people will go with you on the journey and will support you, because we are going to make mistakes, but that's okay. But it's much better to continually refine than to wait for the perfect moment and find half your competitors have beat you to it. So thank you so much to Susan and to Russell. Well done to Sarah and the rest of the Chamber team for their support. And thank you again to you. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and we'll catch up with you hopefully on next week's webinars. But enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll catch you then. Thank you. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.